Imagine you inherit your family's business, except what you're inheriting is a mask and an axe, because congratulations, you are now a serial killer. Welcome back. I first want to start this by saying, you guys remember Lil Rel Howery as Rod from Get Out? I just did a side character deep dive all about that character. Well, he has made his directorial debut with a horror movie titled Haunted Heist. It has made its wider release at the end of this past July. Four estranged friends reunite at a house where one plans to find a valuable antique and rob it. However, the haunted house's ghosts force them to overcome their differences to survive. I don't know about that synopsis, guys, but there are a few familiar faces in this, and it just looks to be a silly, stupid comedy horror, and I just wanted to give him the huge shout out for making his directorial debut. So, anyways, mark your calendars. September 8th this year, Michael Myers is coming to your consoles, guys, for Halloween the game. This is supposed to be an intense new 1v4 asymmetrical slasher where you can either stalk your friends from the shadows or try to survive the night in Haddonfield. It's giving Friday the 13th the game, but that one did lose its online servers, so I'm kind of feeling that they're replacing it with this new Halloween game, but let me know your thoughts on that. And before we get too far into this episode, please make sure you give the Get Weird podcast a 5-star rating, a comment, a like, a follow, whatever, wherever, and check out the Letterboxd list link somewhere, wherever you're listening, with all of the movies I have talked about and plan to talk about in the future. So let's get into today's movie. I am very excited about this one. It is so fun and funny, and it has a lot of heart. Today I am talking about a little film called Bloody Axe Wound from 2024, directed by Matthew John Lawrence. Abby Bladecut is a teenager torn between the macabre traditions of her family's bloody trade and the tender stirrings of her first crush. In the small town of Clover Falls, Abby's father Roger has built an infamous legacy by capturing real-life killings on tape and selling them to eager customers. But as Abby delves deeper into this grisly family business, she begins to wonder if it's time to take the family's tradition in a new direction. And first and foremost, this features Jeffrey Dean Morgan in one of my favorite recent roles of his. And we also have Billy Burke playing a father who has to pass the torch to his daughter Abby, played by the lovable Sari Arambulo, and she has been in a few other shorts and a Lifetime movie, but I think this is her real breakout. So the movie follows Abby Bladecut, who lives in the wonderfully named town Clover Falls. Abby is the daughter of Roger Bladecut, and her family has a very unusual tradition. Like I said, her dad has built a reputation around creating homemade horror movies, except they're not actually fiction. I'm sure you can assume where this goes. Abby is basically growing up with this bizarre family legacy hanging over her, while also dealing with something that is considerably more normal for a teenager: having a crush. And her crush is named Sam Crane, played by Molly Brown. But you've got this weird combination of a teenage coming-of-age movie, a first love story, and a slasher all mixed together. And I love that, because there's always going to be these coming of age stories for every generation. And how often do we get a coming of age movie where the biggest problem isn't just figuring out who you are or surviving high school, it's also figuring out whether you're supposed to inherit your family's murder business, normal teenage problems. But I think that's what makes this movie so interesting, is it's not actually trying to be a terrifying slasher. It's much more interested in being this strange horror comedy that has a super ridiculous premise, but also a sweet emotional center. And I think the relationship between Abby and Sam is one of the stronger parts of this movie. Abby is not just the daughter of a serial killer, she is seriously trying to figure herself out and what she wants and whether she actually wants to follow this path her family has laid out for her. And then you throw this romance into the equation, because being a teenage girl isn't overly complicated enough without your dad being a murderous lunatic. But here's the twist. And spoiler alert, full spoiler. But obviously we have to talk about the actual horror. And obviously this movie definitely has some fun gore. It's not the most brutally disgusting movie I've ever seen, but there are some really great practical effects that I did enjoy. And the movie clearly loves the old school slasher aesthetic. It has the slightly grimy throwback quality from the late 80s, early 90s. And you guys know I love the 80s. It's my favorite decade. And that brings me to one of my favorite aspects of the movie, the video store. I am an absolute sucker for horror movies that incorporate video stores, because I grew up in the area of the video store, the Blockbusters, the Family Videos, the sketchy corner stores that had rentals and didn't care how long you kept them for. It's the tactile action of touching and reading the slipcovers, the try before you buy, if you will. Give me VHS tapes, give me weird little horror movie posters, dusty shelves, and some questionable local movie rental businesses. I'm immediately interested, okay? Give me that adult section with the beaded curtain. It's almost video violence-esque. One of the best shot-on-video duologies set around tape rentals. But Bloody Axe Wound leans hard into the video store element. It's the movie's whole meta approach to horror, because we're looking at a world where slasher movies are made to be distributed at this video store. And it just becomes a really dark reason why these movies become a part of the pop culture. It's almost like a meta take on a Jason character, kind of. Now, this movie was written and directed by Matthew John Lawrence, and this is actually his feature directorial debut, and I think that is worth mentioning because Bloody Axe Wound has the feeling of a filmmaker who has a lot of ideas and wants to throw them all into one movie. But it's only 83 minutes long. It manages to cram slasher, horror, comedy, romance, coming-of-age stuff. This movie is a really great example of having an LGBT storyline in the movie without it bashing you over the head, but also being really true to the characters and what they believe in, and it's really nice to see. This movie also has a lot of 80s nostalgia and video store culture, like I mentioned, and a whole meta commentary on horror movies. And all of that can be a strength and a weakness, because on one hand, I appreciate a movie that has personality, and I would much rather watch something weird and messy that is clearly trying to do something than something completely bland. I want to watch something fun, original, made with human hands, and I want to watch something that has a lot of heart, and this movie is that. But on the other hand, I can understand why some people didn't really jive with this one. The critical reception was a little mixed. Some viewers really liked the charm and practical effects, but others felt the movie was overstuffed and didn't fully develop any of its ideas. But I kind of feel like if you hear both sides, they both have points. I wouldn't say all correct, but I would say if you go into Bloody Axe Wound expecting something perfectly constructed, if you want a terrifying slasher, a masterpiece, you're going to be disappointed. But if you want something that it's a weird little indie movie, it's a goofy slasher with practical effects, queer romance, video store nostalgia, and movies and a movie that is clearly made by people who love horror, I think there is enough here for you to have a good time. It's silly and it's so weird and it's so funny and occasionally pretty bloody. I wouldn't call this a must watch for every horror fan, but if you are looking for something different for low budget indie horror movies, I think this is worth giving it a shot. And at 83 minutes, you're not making a huge commitment. I would rather have a weird little horror movie that swings for the fences than another completely forgettable slasher that we've seen 100 times before. But that's gonna do it for our trip into Bloody Axe Wound. Is this going to be everyone's cup of tea? Probably not, but I love when a horror movie has its own personality, and this definitely does. Sometimes it's exactly what I want from a horror movie. Just some blood, some laughs, some charm, and some family drama. So have you seen this movie? I would love to know what you thought. Did you love the weirdness? Did you think it was a little bit too off the beaten path? Did you sit there wondering why no one in this town called the police at all? But in saying all of that, thank you so much for being here for another week. Thank you so much for listening. Stay strange, stay spooky, and until next time, if you happen to inherit your family's business, make sure you read the fine print. Sayonara, spooky fam.